Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
Imagine working your butt off for years, every late-night study session, every skipped party, every part-time job, all with one goal, to get into your dream college. Now imagine finding out that the money your parents saved for your education is gone. Not just gone, spent. And what did they spend it on? A luxury car. For your sibling. That's exactly what happened to me. One minute, I was celebrating my college acceptance, and the next, I was standing in the driveway, staring at my sister Jenna's brand new car, while my dad beamed like he just won the lottery. "What do you think?" Dad asked, his grin so wide it could have split his face in two. I think I stopped breathing for a second. The car was sleek, shiny, and screamed money. Money that wasn't supposed to exist. Where did you get the money for this?" I finally managed to ask. Dad's grin faltered just a little. "Don't worry about it," he said, brushing me off. But I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly where that money came from. "What about my college fund?" I asked, my voice trembling. Dad's expression darkened, and he crossed his arms. "We'll figure it out, Ryan. Don't make this a big deal." A big deal? He'd just thrown my future out the window to buy my sister a car she didn't even need. If you found out your parents spent your college fund, how would you react? Would you confront them, or just accept it? Let me know in the comments, because honestly, I'm still trying to figure out if I handled this the right way. Standing in that driveway, I couldn't decide what hit me harder, the sight of Jenna's smug smile as she ran her hand along the hood of her new car, or the way Dad brushed me off like I was being unreasonable. "Ryan, don't make this into a thing," he said again. His tone clipped, as if I were the one acting irrational. "A thing?" My voice rose, and I could feel my hands shaking. "You spent my college fund, Dad." "That's not a thing. That's my future." Jenna rolled her eyes from the passenger seat, where she was already fiddling with the car's touchscreen. "Relax, Ryan. It's not like you were even using it yet." That was it. Something in me snapped. "Are you serious right now?" I said, spinning toward her. "You knew about this?" She shrugged, barely looking up. "Dad told me he'd figure something out for you. Besides, I need a car to get to work. You wouldn't want me taking the bus, would you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're 22. I'm 18. I'm the one trying to go to college, and you think you deserve this more than me?" "Enough," Dad barked, his voice sharp. He stepped between us, hands raised like he was some kind of referee. "This isn't a discussion. Jenna needed the car. End of story." "End of story?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "Do you even hear yourself? You promised me that money was for college. You've been telling me that since I was 12. Things change," he said flatly, like that was supposed to explain everything. I stormed back into the house, my head spinning. I needed answers, real ones, not Dad's dismissive excuses. Mom was in the kitchen, washing dishes like nothing was wrong. "Did you know about this?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. She didn't even look up. "Ryan, calm down. Your father did what he thought was best for the family." "The family?" I laughed bitterly. "What about me? What about all the time I've spent working my ass off to get into college because you guys promised you'd help?" Mom sighed, setting a plate down in the drying rack. "We'll figure something out. You've got good grades. You can get scholarships. This isn't the end of the world." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're defending him?" "It's not about defending anyone," she said, finally turning to face me. "It's about understanding that sometimes sacrifices have to be made." "Sacrifices?" I snapped. "Yeah, well, it's easy to talk about sacrifices when it's not your future being sacrificed." That night, I locked myself in my room, ignoring the sound of Dad's voice drifting up the stairs. He was bragging to someone on the phone about the deal he got on the car, like he'd just done something heroic. I stared at my acceptance letter on my desk, the words blurring through my tears. 4 years of late nights and early mornings, juggling school, work, and everything in between. And for what? To have it all thrown away because my sister wanted to cruise around in a shiny new car? My phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend, Alex. "Congrats again on getting in. When's the big move?" I stared at the screen, my stomach sinking. How was I supposed to tell him I wasn't going anywhere? That my own dad had decided my education wasn't as important as Jenna's need for leather seats and Bluetooth? I typed back a quick, "Not sure yet," and set my phone down, my chest heavy with a mix of anger and helplessness. What would you do if the people you were supposed to trust the most betrayed you? Would you fight back, or would you walk away? Let me know, because I was about to make a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I woke up still fuming. Sleep had done nothing to dull the anger simmering just beneath the surface. I avoided Dad and Jenna as much as possible, staying in my room and trying to figure out my next move. But when Mom knocked on my door, I knew I couldn't hide forever. "Ryan, can we talk?" she asked softly, peeking into the room. I hesitated before letting her in, half hoping she'd come to apologize or, at the very least, take my side. She sat on the edge of my bed, smoothing out invisible wrinkles on her jeans. "Your dad told me about your little outburst yesterday," she began, her voice calm but edged with disapproval. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Outburst? "Mom, he drained my college fund to buy Jenna a car. Do you not see how insane that is?" She sighed, avoiding my gaze. "Ryan, you're blowing this out of proportion. Your father made a decision for the family. Jenna needed that car to get to her new job. It wasn't an easy choice, but sometimes we have to make sacrifices for each other." I felt my blood boil. Why is it always me who has to make the sacrifices? Jenna's 22, Mom. She can figure out her own transportation. Meanwhile, I'm stuck trying to figure out how I'm supposed to pay for college because Dad decided my future doesn't matter. "That's not fair," she said quickly, her tone sharpening. "You know we care about your future. Your dad is under a lot of pressure, and he did what he thought was best. Family comes first, Ryan. Family comes first?" I repeated bitterly. "No, Jenna comes first. She always has, and you know it." Mom looked genuinely hurt, but I wasn't backing down. I had years of pent-up frustration bubbling to the surface, and it wasn't going away without a fight. "Do you even realize how many times I've been pushed aside for her?" I continued. "Remember my 10th birthday? You canceled my party so you could take Jenna to her cheerleading competition. Or how about last year when you gave her money for a vacation but told me we couldn't afford a new laptop for school?" "Ryan, that's not fair," she said again, her voice wavering. "No, what's not fair is that I've spent my whole life working hard, trying to make you and Dad proud, while Jenna gets handed everything on a silver platter. And now you expect me to just sit here and be okay with it? Well, I'm not." Mom didn't have a response to that. Instead, she stood up and smoothed her jeans again, her usual tactic for avoiding conflict. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said finally, "but this isn't the time to hold grudges. You're smart, Ryan. You'll figure something out." And with that, she left, closing the door behind her. I sat there for what felt like hours, stewing in my frustration. I could hear Jenna downstairs, laughing and talking to Dad like nothing was wrong. It was as if they didn't even care about the damage they'd done. Eventually, I forced myself to go downstairs, determined to confront Jenna. I found her lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking every bit as entitled as I felt she was. "We need to talk," I said, crossing my arms. She barely glanced up. "About what?" "About the car. About the fact that you're okay with Dad stealing my college fund to buy you a luxury ride." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Ryan. Are you still going on about that? It's not like it's the end of the world. You'll figure out another way to pay for school. Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "Do you even care how hard I've worked for this? Or is it just easier to pretend like it doesn't matter because you got what you wanted?" "Stop being so dramatic," she said, sitting up. "I didn't force Dad to buy me the car. He made that decision on his own. And yeah, maybe it sucks for you, but life isn't fair. Get over it." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "You're unbelievable," I said, shaking my head. "Do you even hear yourself? You don't care about anyone but yourself." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Don't act like you're some perfect victim here. You've always been Dad's golden boy. Straight A's, college scholarships, the whole package. So what if I get one nice thing for once?" "One nice thing?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've gotten plenty of nice things, Jenna. Meanwhile, I've had to work for everything. And now you've taken the one thing I thought I could count on." She didn't respond, just crossed her arms and glared at me. Later that night, I sat in my room, replaying the day's arguments in my head. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Jenna wasn't the only problem. This wasn't just about the car. It was about years of being overlooked, of being treated like I was less important. I thought about what my options were. I could keep fighting, keep trying to get Dad to see reason. Or I could walk away, stop trying to be the good son, the one who always put everyone else first. For the first time in my life, I was seriously considering what it would mean to put myself first. When family lets you down, how far would you go to stand up for yourself? Would you cut ties or keep fighting? Let me know what you'd do, because I was about to make a decision I couldn't take back. By the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this slide. Dad had crossed a line. No, obliterated it, and pretending everything was fine wasn't an option. If he thought he could steamroll my future and get away with it, he had another thing coming. I found him in the garage, tinkering with his tools like nothing had happened. He didn't even look up as I walked in. "Hey, Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Morning," he replied casually, tightening a bolt on some piece of equipment. I didn't have time for small talk. "We need to talk," he sighed, setting down his wrench and finally meeting my gaze. "I figured this was coming. Let me guess, it's about the car again?" "Yeah, it's about the car," I said sharply. "And about how you decided my education wasn't worth as much as Jenna's stupid luxury ride." He raised an eyebrow, his expression hardening. "Watch your tone, Ryan." "Or what?" I snapped. "You'll drain another account to fund Jenna's next whim? Maybe a beach house or a European vacation?" His jaw tightened, and I could see the irritation bubbling beneath the surface. "It's not like that, and you know it. I made a decision for this family. Jenna needed that car to secure a job. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The right choice? Are you serious? You're telling me that buying Jenna a car she didn't need was more important than my future?" "She did need it," he insisted, his voice rising. "How else was she supposed to get to her interviews? Public transit? That's not practical. This car is an investment in her career." "Investment?" I repeated, incredulous. "You've got to be kidding me. She's had months to find a job and hasn't even tried. And now you're rewarding her for sitting on her ass while I've been busting mine for years." "That's enough," he barked, his voice echoing in the small garage. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under to keep this family running. Sometimes I have to make tough calls, and this was one of them." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tough calls? You call throwing away my future a tough call? I worked for that money, Dad. Every summer job, every weekend shift. I put in the effort because you told me it would pay off. And now it's gone because Jenna batted her eyelashes and said she needed a shiny new toy? His face turned red, and for a moment, I thought he might explode. Instead, he pointed a finger at me and said, "You're being ungrateful. Do you have any idea how lucky you are? Most kids don't even have a college fund. I've worked hard to give you and your sister everything you need, and all I get in return is attitude." "Ungrateful?" I shouted, my voice cracking with frustration. "You think I'm ungrateful because I'm mad that you lied to me? That you took something I've been counting on for years and handed it to Jenna like it was nothing? If anyone's ungrateful, it's her." "Don't drag your sister into this," he snapped. "She's already in it," I shot back. "And the worst part? She doesn't even care. She doesn't care that she screwed me over. She doesn't care that she's taking something that wasn't hers to take. And you let her do it because you've always put her first." "That's not true," he said, but his voice wavered. "Isn't it?" I pressed. "Every time Jen has needed something, you've bent over backward to give it to her. Meanwhile, I've had to earn everything. And now, the one thing I thought I could count on, the one thing I've been working toward, is gone. So yeah, Dad, maybe I'm ungrateful. Or maybe I'm just done being treated like I don't matter." For a moment, the garage was silent, the air heavy with tension. Then Dad shook his head, his expression cold and unreadable. "You're overreacting," he said finally. "We'll figure something out for your college. You'll still go." I laughed bitterly. "Figure something out? Like what? A last-minute scholarship? A miracle?" "Newsflash, Dad. I don't have time to figure something out. Applications are due, and I've got nothing to fall back on because you spent it all on a car." His silence said everything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I spoke again. "Here's the deal, Dad. You fix this. You find a way to replace that money, or I'm done trying to be the good son. I'm done putting this family first when it's clear that I'm just an afterthought to you." His eyes narrowed, and I could see the anger bubbling up again. "You don't get to give me ultimatums, Ryan." "I'm not giving you an ultimatum," I said firmly. "I'm giving you a choice. Either you start treating me like I matter, or I'm done bending over backward for a family that doesn't give a damn about me." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the garage, my heart pounding in my chest. How do you fight for your future when the people who are supposed to support you are the ones holding you back? What would you do if you were in Ryan's shoes? Let me know, because for me, the fight was just beginning. After my blowout with Dad, I felt like I was standing on a crumbling ledge, barely holding my footing. Every part of me wanted to believe he'd fix this, that he'd realize the weight of what he'd done and make it right. But deep down, I knew better. The house was suffocating. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe. Dad avoided me. Mom kept trying to play peacemaker, and Jenna acted like nothing had happened. I needed air, space to think, to process everything. I grabbed my backpack and left, walking aimlessly through the neighborhood until I ended up at Alex's house. Alex had been my best friend since middle school, the guy who always had my back no matter what. When I knocked on his door, he opened it with a wide grin that faded the second he saw my face. "Whoa," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "You look like you've been hit by a truck. What happened?" I collapsed onto his couch and buried my face in my hands. "You're not going to believe this," I muttered. "Try me." I told him everything, about the college fund, the car, the argument with Dad. By the time I finished, Alex was pacing the room, his hands on his hips. "Dude, that's messed up," he said finally. "Like, seriously messed up. Tell me about it," I muttered. "What are you going to do?" he asked, sitting down across from me. I shook my head, frustrated. "I don't know. I gave him an ultimatum, but I don't think he's going to do anything." "He doesn't think he did anything wrong." Alex frowned, his expression thoughtful. "You can't just let this go, Ryan. You've worked too hard to let them screw you over like this. But are you ready to go all the way? Like, really stand your ground, no matter what it costs?" His question hit me harder than I expected. Was I ready? I wasn't sure. The thought of completely breaking with my family terrified me, but the alternative, letting them walk all over me, felt even worse. The next day at school, I went to see Miss Carter, my English teacher. She wasn't just a teacher. She was one of the few adults I actually trusted. When I told her about my situation, she listened quietly, her brow furrowed in concern. "That's a tough spot to be in, Ryan," she said when I finished. "But let me ask you this. What's your goal here? Is it about getting your dad to replace the money? Or is it about making him understand how much he's hurt you?" "Both, I guess," I admitted. "But mostly, I just want to feel like I matter. Like I'm not just some afterthought compared to Jenna." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I get that. But you need to be clear about what you're fighting for. If it's the money, there are other ways to get to college. Scholarships, loans, grants. But if it's about respect, that's a harder battle. And it might not end the way you want it to." Her words hung in the air, heavy with truth. "So, what do I do?" I asked. "You stand up for yourself," she said firmly. "But you also have to be prepared for the consequences. You might not get the resolution you're hoping for, but at least you'll know you didn't let them take advantage of you." After school, I went home and locked myself in my room, replaying Alex's and Miss Carter's advice in my head. Was I ready to risk everything to make a point? Was it even worth it? That evening, while I was still lost in thought, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my grandmother. "I heard about what happened. Call me." I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to drag her into this mess. But curiosity got the better of me, and I dialed her number. "Ryan," she said warmly when she answered. "I'm glad you called. How are you holding up?" "Not great," I admitted. "I'm just trying to figure out what to do." There was a pause, and then she said, "I'm not surprised this happened. Your father's always been like this, stubborn and short-sighted." Her words caught me off guard. "Wait, you're not on his side?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, honey, I haven't been on his side in years. He's always favored your sister, and I've told him time and time again it's going to come back to bite him. But he doesn't listen." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. "So, what do I do?" "You fight for yourself," she said firmly. "You remind him that you're just as important as Jenna, and you don't let him guilt you into thinking otherwise. And if you need help, you come to me. I'll make sure you get to college, no matter what it takes." Her words hit me like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I wasn't alone, not completely. "Thanks, Grandma," I said quietly, my throat tight with emotion. "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "Just promise me you won't give up. You deserve better than this, Ryan." With a new ally on his side, Ryan feels emboldened. But is he ready to face the deeper truths about his family? How far would you go to stand up for yourself when the odds feel stacked against you? The following weekend, my grandmother showed up at our house unannounced. I wasn't expecting her. No one was. But as soon as I saw her walk through the door, her signature determined look plastered on her face, I knew things were about to get messy. "Where's your father?" she asked, brushing past me into the living room like a storm blowing through a quiet town. He's in the garage," I managed to say, caught off guard. Without missing a beat, she marched toward the garage, leaving me to follow in her wake. By the time I caught up, she was already standing in front of Dad, her arms crossed and her expression stern. "Mom?" Dad said, blinking in surprise. What are you doing here? We need to talk, she said sharply, not giving him a chance to dismiss her. Dad set down the wrench he'd been holding, his brow furrowing. About what? About Ryan. About the college fund. About the mess you've made of this family, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. I leaned against the doorframe, my heart pounding. I'd never seen Grandma like this before. At least, not with Dad. Look, Mom, this isn't any of your business, Dad started, his tone defensive. Oh, it's very much my business, she shot back. You think you can just steal your son's future to buy Jenna a toy and expect everything to be fine? You're out of your mind. For a moment, Dad just stared at her, clearly caught off guard. But then his expression hardened. It's not a toy. It's a necessity. Jenna needed that car for her job. Job? Grandma scoffed. The same job she still doesn't have? Don't insult my intelligence, Robert. This isn't about Jenna's needs. It's about your inability to say no to her. You've been spoiling her since the day she was born, and now Ryan's paying the price for it. Dad's jaw clenched, and I could see the anger rising in him. That's not true, he said through gritted teeth. I've done everything I can to support both of my kids. Oh, really? Grandma said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Then why does one of them have a shiny new car while the other is left scrambling to figure out how to pay for college? Mom, you don't understand the pressure I'm under, Dad said, his voice rising. I have to make decisions that are best for the whole family, not just one person. Don't you dare play the martyr with me, she snapped. You made this decision for Jenna, not for the family. And you know it. At that moment, Mom walked in, her expression panicked. What's going on? She asked, looking between Grandma and Dad. What's going on, Grandma said, turning to her, is that your husband has completely failed your son, and you're letting it happen? Mom, please, Mom said, her voice pleading. This isn't helping. No, what's not helping is your silence, Grandma shot back. You should be standing up for Ryan, but instead, you're letting Robert and Jenna walk all over him. Mom's face turned red, but she didn't say anything. And then, as if the universe decided things weren't chaotic enough, Jenna waltzed in. She took one look at the scene in front of her and rolled her eyes. What's all the yelling about now? She asked, clearly annoyed. Oh, perfect timing, Grandma said, her gaze narrowing. Maybe you can explain why you think it's okay to take your brother's college fund without a second thought. Jenna blinked, caught off guard for a split second before shrugging. I didn't take it. Dad gave it to me. And you didn't think to question that? Grandma pressed. Why would I? Jenna said defensively. It's not like I forced him. He made the decision, and it's not my fault Ryan can't handle it. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Are you serious right now? I said, stepping forward. You knew that money was for my education, and you didn't care? Ryan, calm down, she said, throwing her hands up. It's not like I did it on purpose. Dad said he'd figure something out for you. So I figured it wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal? I repeated, my voice shaking. It's my future, Jenna. How can you be so selfish? Selfish, she snapped, her tone suddenly defensive. Oh, give me a break, Ryan. You've always been Dad's favorite. You get the good grades, the praise, the attention. So what if I get one thing for once? One thing? I said, my voice rising. This isn't one thing. This is everything I've worked for, and you don't even care. The room erupted into chaos, everyone talking over each other until Dad finally shouted, Enough? The silence that followed was deafening. This is how it's going to be, Dad said, his voice cold and firm. What's done is done. If you can't accept that, Ryan, maybe you need to think about where you stand in this family. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Are you giving me an ultimatum? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. No, he said. I'm telling you to grow up. Family isn't about keeping score. It's about sticking together, even when things don't go your way. I stared at him, my chest tightening with anger and disbelief. So, I'm just supposed to suck it up and let you walk all over me? Yes, he said simply. Because that's what family does. How do you move forward when the people you trust the most are the ones holding you back? Is it worth staying, or is it time to walk away? Share your thoughts, because I was about to make the hardest decision of my life. The days after Dad's ultimatum felt like walking through quicksand. Every step I took seemed heavier, dragging me deeper into a pit of frustration and anger. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't count on my family to fix this. If I wanted to go to college, I'd have to figure it out myself. That realization was both freeing and terrifying. For years, I'd worked under the assumption that my parents had my back. Now, it was painfully clear that I was on my own. I started spending my evenings scouring the internet for scholarships, grants, and anything else that might help cover tuition. Every search felt like a gamble, but I refused to give up. My dream school's deadline was looming, and I was running out of time. My determination didn't go unnoticed. Grandma called me one evening, her voice warm and full of pride. "I hear you've been working hard to find a way forward," she said. "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Doesn't feel like I have much of a choice." "Well," she said, a hint of hesitation in her tone, "I've been thinking. I still have some savings from your grandfather's pension. It's not much, but it might be enough to get you started." Her offer caught me off guard. For a moment, I felt a rush of gratitude, but then doubt crept in. "Grandma, I can't ask you to do that," I said. "You didn't ask," she replied firmly. "I'm offering." "I know, but it's not fair to you. That money's yours. I don't want to take it." "Ryan," she said, her voice softening, "sometimes family does step up. And unlike your father, I believe in investing in the right people. You're one of them." Her words meant more to me than I could say. But as much as I wanted to accept her help, something held me back. I didn't want to depend on anyone, not after what had happened with Dad. I thanked her and promised to think about it, though deep down, I wasn't sure I could say yes. Meanwhile, life at home remained a powder keg waiting to explode. Dad continued to avoid me, and Mom pretended everything was fine. Jenna, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. She paraded her new car around like it was a trophy, posting endless photos on social media and bragging to anyone who would listen. But karma has a funny way of catching up with people. One morning, I woke up to the sound of shouting from the driveway. I looked out the window and saw Jenna standing next to her car, gesturing wildly as Dad examined the engine. Apparently, her shiny new ride wasn't so perfect after all. By lunchtime, the car was officially out of commission. The repair costs were steep, and Dad wasn't thrilled about shelling out more money. Jenna, of course, wasn't about to let a little thing like that stop her. "Hey, Ryan," she said later that day, leaning against my doorframe like we were best friends. I didn't even look up from my laptop. "What do you want?" "I need a ride," she said casually. I glanced at her, my eyebrow raised. "Excuse me?" "My car's in the shop," she explained, as if I hadn't already heard. "I need you to drive me to a few places this week." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. "You're joking, right?" I said. "No," she replied, looking genuinely confused. "Why would I be joking?" "Because," I said slowly, "you have the nerve to ask me for a favor after everything you've done?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Ryan, are you seriously still mad about the car? Get over it." "Get over it?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Jenna, you took my college fund. You don't get to act like this is no big deal." "I didn't take it," she snapped. "Dad gave it to me. And like I've already said, he'll figure something out for you. So stop being such a baby." Her words hit me like a match to dry tinder. All the anger, frustration, and resentment I'd been holding and came boiling to the surface. "You know what, Jenna?" I said, standing up and facing her head on. "You're unbelievable. You've spent your entire life being handed everything, and you don't even care how it affects anyone else. You're selfish, entitled, and completely blind to the fact that the world doesn't revolve around you." "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with indignation. "You heard me," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You've been coddled your whole life, and now you expect me to clean up your mess? No, I'm done. Figure it out yourself." Her face turned red, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, she stormed off, muttering something under her breath about how I was overreacting. That night, I lay in bed, replaying the confrontation in my head. Part of me felt guilty for snapping, but another part, the part that had been silenced for years, felt a sense of relief. For the first time, I'd stood up for myself, and it felt damn good. But as satisfying as it was, I knew this was far from over. Dad wasn't going to change, and Jenna sure as hell wasn't going to apologize. If I wanted to move forward, I'd have to keep fighting. For myself, for my future, and for the respect I deserved. What happens when standing up for yourself means burning bridges? Can you ever truly move on, or do the wounds of betrayal linger forever? Let me know what you think, because for me, the hardest decisions were still ahead. The tension in our house was like a kettle boiling over, steam hissing out with nowhere to go. Every word spoken felt loaded, every interaction an argument waiting to happen. Even Mom, who usually tried to smooth things over, seemed on edge. The silence didn't last long. Family meeting, Dad announced one evening, standing in the living room with his arms crossed. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. I glanced at Mom, who looked away, avoiding eye contact. Jenna, sprawled out on the couch, rolled her eyes but didn't argue. I took a deep breath and followed everyone into the dining room, where Dad stood at the head of the table like a general preparing for battle. "Let's get one thing straight," Dad began, his voice firm. "This family is falling apart, and I'm not going to sit back and let it happen." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "You mean you're not going to let me stop playing along?" He shot me a look, but I didn't care. "You've made your feelings clear, Ryan," he continued, his tone sharp. "But this constant fighting has to stop. We're a family, and families stick together. That's non-negotiable." "Families stick together?" I repeated, incredulous. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you've stuck together with Jenna while leaving me out to dry." "Ryan, don't start," Mom said quietly, but I ignored her. "No, I want to hear this," Dad said, leaning forward. "Go ahead. Tell me how we've failed you." I felt my chest tighten, but I pushed through the discomfort. "Fine. Let's start with the college fund. The one I spent years counting on, only for you to drain it without even telling me. And don't give me that crap about it being for the family. We both know this was about Jenna, not us." "Ryan, I did what I had to do," he said, his voice steady but defensive. "Jenna needed that car. She didn't need anything." I snapped, slamming my hand on the table. "She wanted it, and you gave it to her without a second thought. Meanwhile, I've spent my whole life working my ass off, only to get slapped in the face every time she snaps her fingers." "That's not fair," Jenna interjected, crossing her arms. "I didn't ask for this drama." "Of course you didn't," I shot back. "You never ask for anything. You just expect it. And Dad's always more than happy to deliver." "Enough," Dad barked, his face red. "You're acting like a spoiled child, Ryan. Life isn't fair. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made." "Sacrifices?" I said, laughing bitterly. "You mean my sacrifices? When has Jenna ever sacrificed anything? You've been coddling her for years while I've had to fend for myself. And now you're telling me I'm the problem because I won't just roll over and accept it." The room went silent. For a moment, I thought I might have gotten through to him. But then he shook his head, his expression hardening. "You don't understand the bigger picture," he said. "You're young. You think everything revolves around you, but it doesn't. My job is to make sure this family stays afloat, and sometimes that means making tough choices." "Tough choices?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Do you even hear yourself? You stole from me, Dad. You didn't just take money, you took my future. And the worst part? You don't even feel bad about it." "That's not true," Mom said softly, but her voice was drowned out by Dad's response. "You think I don't feel bad?" he said, his voice rising. "Do you think I like being in this position? Do you think I haven't lost sleep over this? But at the end of the day, I did what I thought was best. You can hate me for it if you want, but I'm not going to apologize for putting this family first." I stared at him, my chest tight with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "You didn't put the family first," I said quietly. "You put Jenna first. And you don't even have the guts to admit it." Jenna let out an exaggerated sigh. "Oh my God, Ryan, get over it. You'll figure out college. You always do. This whole thing is so blown out of proportion." I turned to her, my patience finally snapping. "You think this is blown out of proportion? You think my future is just some minor inconvenience for you? Let me tell you something, Jenna. You're not the center of the universe. And one day, when Dad's not around to bail you out, you're going to realize just how much you've taken for granted." Her face turned red, but she didn't respond. "Ryan, enough," Mom said, her voice trembling. "This isn't helping." "No, it's not," I agreed, standing up, "because no matter what I say, none of you are going to change. You've already decided that I'm the problem, and nothing I do will ever be enough to change your minds." "Ryan," Dad started, but I cut him off. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done trying to make you see me. I'm done fighting for a place in this family. If you want me to keep sacrificing for everyone else, you can forget it." With that, I walked out of the dining room, leaving them behind. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, but mostly, I felt empty. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I had a place in my own family. What happens when the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest? Is it possible to rebuild, or is it better to walk away? Let me know what you do, because for me, the answers weren't clear anymore. The morning after the family meeting, the house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. No one looked me in the eye as I grabbed a cup of coffee and headed back to my room. I wasn't sure if the silence meant I'd finally gotten through to them, or if they'd just given up on me altogether. Either way, I couldn't afford to dwell on it. My focus had to be on moving forward, on building a future for myself, with or without their help. That day, I started applying for scholarships. I'd been putting it off, clinging to the hope that Dad might come around and replace the money he'd taken. But after last night, I knew better. If I wanted to get to college, I'd have to do it on my own. I spent hours at my desk, scrolling through endless applications and writing essays until my fingers ached. Each form felt like a small act of defiance, a reminder that no matter how much Dad had taken from me, he couldn't take my determination. By the end of the week, I'd submitted 5 applications and lined up an interview for a part-time job at a local diner. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Meanwhile, the rift in my family continued to grow. Dad barely spoke to me, his silence thick with unspoken tension. Jenna avoided me entirely, though I'd catch her glaring at me from across the room when she thought I wasn't looking. Mom tried to keep the peace, but her efforts felt half-hearted at best. She'd ask me how my day was going, but the moment I mentioned scholarships or work, she'd change the subject. It was as if she couldn't bring herself to acknowledge the reality of what had happened, or her role in it. The only person who truly supported me was Grandma. She called every few days to check in, offering encouragement and advice. "Don't let them drag you down, Ryan," she told me during one call. "You're stronger than this. You're stronger than them." Her words gave me strength, but they also made me realize just how much I'd been leaning on her. I turned down her offer to pay for college, but she was still the only person I felt I could truly rely on. One afternoon, as I was walking home from the diner after my second interview, Jenna pulled up beside me in her newly repaired car. "Need a ride?" she asked, her tone smug. I stopped walking and stared at her. "What do you want, Jenna?" She shrugged, leaning out the window. "Just thought you might want to talk. You know, clear the air." I let out a bitter laugh. "Clear the air? Really? Now you care about how I feel." Her smile faltered. "Look, Ryan, I get it. You're mad. But you need to understand, this isn't my fault. I didn't ask Dad to spend your college fund." "No," I said, my voice steady. "But you didn't care enough to stop him either. And that's the problem, Jenna. You don't care about anyone but yourself." She frowned, her expression unreadable. "That's not fair." "Neither is life," I said, turning and walking away. That night, as I sat at my desk filling out yet another scholarship application, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't consumed by anger or frustration. Instead, I felt focused, driven. Dad might have taken my college fund, but he hadn't taken my future. That was mine, and I wasn't going to let him, or anyone else, take it away from me. A few weeks later, I came home to find an envelope on my bed. My name was scrawled across the front in Dad's handwriting, the ink slightly smudged. I stared at it for a long time, unsure if I even wanted to open it. Part of me was curious. Had he finally decided to apologize? To take responsibility? But another part of me didn't want to know. I'd spent so much time trying to get him to see me, to value me, and I wasn't sure if I could handle another disappointment. In the end, I left the envelope unopened. I'd like to tell you that things got better after that my family miraculously came together and worked through their issues. But the truth is, life doesn't always wrap up in a neat little bow. Dad and I still don't talk much. Jenna is still Jenna. And Mom, well, she's still trying to keep the peace, even if it means pretending everything is fine. But I've learned something important. Family isn't about sacrifice, it's about balance. It's about mutual respect and understanding, about supporting each other without losing yourself in the process. Can family bonds survive betrayal? Would you forgive or move on? Let me know, because for me, the story isn't over yet.